So if you don't build, you have a problem. And if you do build, you have a problem. And to go out of that catch-22 situation, we will need science, new materials, but at the same time, strategic design. So whenever we go in our peripheries to try to improve quality of life, you find something floating in the air that is hard to describe what it is, but it's definitely different codes. Maybe it's connected that for decades we have created peripheries where are expelled the poor, and you've grown up in an environment where you have too many people that have nothing to lose. And this in this film Bardo by González Iñárritu, I recommend, if I cannot provide the context, I mean, just watch that film 3 minutes, from minute 59 to an hour and 2 minutes. And then you will get what I'm talking about. This filmmaker calls them the walking bombs. And that means that people that have grown without any purpose in life, they're going to be born and then die with having been nobody. You have then somebody that understands that this lack of purpose in life, in addition to the territorial control for distributing drugs, has created not only the traffic issue of narcos, but even more so, a parallel state that arrives much faster and much more efficiently than the conventional state. But in this state, what operates is not the rule of law that governs our civilized societies, by the law of the jungle. In any case, the pulsion of narcos is not just, let's say, for the outlaws and the criminals in our the underworld. It's a basic human condition that triggers greed and the abuse, even in the elite. So maybe narcos are an expression of this paradox of neoliberal capitalism, where there's an excess of greed and a lack of ambition. And unless we're able to deal with these forces, we won't be able to solve the question, which is how we will live together. If we're unable to come with an answer for that question, I guess that we can say that civilization is over. Story is a word that is important because the war against narcos is not a police one. It's not even a kind of coming with social aid. It's a cultural battle. So what narcos have done is that they provide people that are marginalized from opportunities with stuff. So it's a shortcut. The life expectancy is rather short for a young male, for example. So they get the guns, the cars, the women, the drugs. But it's not only that. What they have really provided, it's purpose. So for people that may have a life and they go through life without being nobody, all of a sudden somebody comes and says, okay, if you work for me, you may be somebody at the very end. You will die young anyhow, but you will be somebody. And that, from the narco side, has stories, has music. So the music is able to capture a new epic and to battle that, fight that back with it, an alternative narrative, an alternative epic, so a different story. I would say the biggest challenge in architecture or in the built environment in general is that we're living in a catch-22 situation. So if we don't build a lot, there's too many people in the world without basic services being provided, basic sanitation, water, sewage. So if a pandemic hits and then you're given a very simple recommendation, stay at home, wash your hands, you can't do that because there's no running water, there's not even a home. So there's an urgent need to build. But if we build using the conventional and the existing methods, the carbon footprint of the building industry ends with the planet. So if you don't build, you have a problem, and if you do build, you have a problem. And to go out of that catch-22 situation, we will need science, new materials, but at the same time, strategic design. Ways to redefine or reshape what we consider to be architecture, to channel big forces, meaning the people's own building capacity, so that they're part of the solution and not part of the problem. And that is a different attitude from what we have had so far. Cities reflect in a very brutal, but also on a daily basis, the inequalities in our societies. So in the world in general, we've seen poverty being improved in the sense that, the income, basic needs are we have more and more people provided with basic needs and going out of poverty, yet inequalities haven't been touched. And that means that the feeling in a society where some people have all the opportunities and get all the benefits, and there's a majority that is segregated from those, creates a tension, a social ticking time bomb that too often we're witnessing to be such a force, so destructive force, an incapacity to be able to live together, that triggers these basic primitive emotions like, anger, resentment, and envy. Why them, not me? And if there's an inequality in a society, then cities reflect that right away. But then cities could also be the way out of this, because normally the only thing that you hear when trying to correct inequalities is income redistribution. So, to start with, that means that, as if inequalities were just an economical issue, and they're not. But cities can offer a shortcut, because if strategically identify projects of infrastructure or public transportation or housing or public space, you can improve quality of life without having to touch income. So, for example, people that have no capacity to go on holidays, they work like crazy every single day of their life, they can't afford to have holidays. If you have the best public spaces in the poorest neighborhoods of a city, then you may have an experience of a daily experience of a little bit of a relief in a life that is very hard. And that, in principle, doesn't need any income change for the family. It's just a way to strategically allocate public funding into that. Public transportation. In our cities, poor people live a couple of hours away from where they have something to do: jobs, healthcare, education, or even recreation. So you pay with time and quality of life in really, packed public transportation systems. Imagine if, without touching where you're living now, without touching income, those couple of hours could be done if you're seated in a public bus with air conditioning or heating. Those same 2 hours would be so completely different. So you can correct this experience of inequality by investing in state-of-the-art quality public transportation. And that's the same thing with infrastructure and housing. So therefore, cities may offer another tool to the toolbox to correct inequalities that are not depending only on income redistribution. Well, to start with, it's not really a choice. People will build their own environment even if you don't want to. So if you start from evidence, the public funding can allow to build housing units in the developing world, and I'm talking about here 2 billion people in the world, so that's the majority of the planet, have governments that don't have enough funding to provide with, let's say, a middle-class standard housing solution. So when you don't have enough resources, governments and markets do 2 things: reduce and displace. Put people where land costs nothing, far away from opportunities, in small units. So when you go and study what's happening in hundreds of thousands of hectares in our peripheries, people not being able to live decently in such tiny units, they expand them. So it's a fact that people will build their own built environment. So if you understand that and meet with them and agree on who's going to do what, so you split tasks. People is part of the solution, not part of the problem. So a participatory process, more than, let's say, or in addition to, okay, let's do something with the people, not for the people. When you involve people so that they become part of the solution and not of the problem, there are a couple of issues that one needs to understand. The reason for involving people is, well, the first thing you have to do is to communicate constraints. If you don't do that, you create expectations that then you won't be able to manage, and that might be a problem. Once people is informed about what can be done and what cannot be done, eventually you have a starting point to create trust, and that matters a lot. The built environment takes a lot of time. So you better make sure that your relationship with people is based on trust. But then from when you have difficult questions, what you need is knowledge. I may have part of the knowledge, technical knowledge, design, policy, but people have different type of knowledge. So strict wisdom, to establish priorities, hierarchy, what is more relevant? And that knowledge is necessary for a tough question. What that creates ultimately is not just a more efficient outcome for the built environment. From a social point of view, it opens a new type of relationship that is not top-down, let's say paternalistic or patronizing in the sense, I know something, you know nothing, so you just follow whatever I say. But also not the other way around, where, oh, people said that, and because of that, we're just going to do that. I mean, if what people want is not professionally reasonable, when I'm not open to do things that are not professionally responsible. But that creates a resultant relationship. I know something, people know other things, and this will result in exchange of priorities, hierarchies, wisdom, knowledge. I guess what creates is a more stable, more solid social fabric that we are desperately needed in today's world. I don't think in those terms. I mean, it's not hope, not pessimism. It's you just wake up in the morning and do your job. That's it.